Samantha Wright, a talented black nurse, faces systemic racism and subtle discrimination in her hospital as she navigates her career. But her world changes when she saves the life of a prominent businessman, Mr. Harper. As she uncovers a dark conspiracy involving organ trafficking and political corruption, Samantha must decide whether to expose the truth, risking her life, or walk away from the dangerous forces closing in on her. Before we dive into this gripping story, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Samantha had always known that becoming a nurse wasn't going to be easy. Raised in a small, predominantly black neighborhood in South Philadelphia, she grew up watching her mother, Angela, a nurse at the local clinic, tirelessly dedicate her life to helping others. Angela had always said, being a nurse isn't just about the medicine. It's about giving people hope when they've lost it. Her mother was a true inspiration, and Samantha knew that she too wanted to make a difference. From a young age, Samantha felt the weight of her dreams pressing on her shoulders. They were big dreams, ones that often felt too heavy for someone like her, a black woman in a country that still struggled with deep-rooted prejudice. She had seen it in the way her mother was treated at work, how patients sometimes spoke to her as if she were invisible. It wasn't always explicit, but the racism was there, like a constant undertow that never quite lets you breathe easy. But Samantha had refused to let it stop her. She graduated at the top of her high school class and earned a scholarship to a well-known nursing program at a prestigious university. For Samantha, it was her shot, her chance to prove that she belonged, that she could be part of a system that had often marginalized people like her. Still, the transition to a predominantly white university was far more difficult than she had imagined. Despite her skills, despite her passion, she often felt like an outsider, always having to work twice as hard just to be seen as capable. The whispers behind her back, the subtle looks of disbelief when she spoke up in class, it wore on her, piece by piece. Her personal life wasn't much easier. Samantha had been dating Marcus for 2 years, a fellow nursing student, someone who shared her dream of helping others. Marcus was supportive, but his life seemed a lot easier than hers. He didn't have to fight for every inch of space in the room. His name wasn't questioned at the hospital when he walked into a shift. He didn't get second-guessed by their professors when he offered an opinion. Still, Marcus was there for her, and that was enough for Samantha to hang on to. But as the years went on, the cracks in their relationship started to show. Marcus didn't understand the constant battle she faced. He didn't understand how exhausting it was to always feel like she had to prove her worth. He told her to let go of her anger, to stop fighting for equality, and just do her job. But Samantha couldn't. How could she ignore the stares, the comments, the doubts? How could she pretend like everything was fine when she was constantly made to feel less than? The relationship began to feel like another weight she had to carry, and slowly they drifted apart. By the time Samantha graduated and began working at the hospital, they had quietly ended things. It wasn't a dramatic breakup, but a quiet unraveling. Samantha focused on her career, telling herself that being great at her job was enough. After all, helping others, making a difference in the world, that's what mattered most. But her personal life remained a challenge. Her mom had been thrilled when Samantha had landed a job at the city's largest hospital. "I'm so proud of you, baby," Angela would say, her voice filled with pride. But Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what she accomplished, there was always someone there to remind her that she wasn't enough. Samantha's first few months at the hospital were grueling. The hours were long, the patients demanding, and the staff, well, they weren't always welcoming. Samantha had been assigned to the ICU, an intense unit that required precision and quick thinking. She was excited about the challenge, but there was a sense of isolation that weighed on her from day one. It wasn't always visible, but it was there. The subtle looks from senior nurses, the moments when her ideas were dismissed without a second thought, the offhand comments from doctors who assumed she couldn't handle the pressure, it all added up. One of the most frustrating things was the way Dr. Daniels treated her. He was the head of the ICU, a brilliant doctor, but also someone who carried an old-school attitude about nurses. Samantha had seen it with her own eyes, the way he dismissed suggestions from the nurses, especially when it came from someone like her. He never gave her credit, even when she had an idea that could save a patient's life. One morning while checking on a patient, Dr. Daniels had given her a look of disbelief when she suggested a different treatment approach. "You really think we should do that?" he had asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "Are you sure you're qualified to make that call?" Samantha had smiled tightly, refusing to rise to the bait. "I'm qualified enough to take care of your patients, Dr. Daniels." It wasn't a fight worth having, so she turned and walked away. But the bitterness lingered. In these moments, Samantha realized just how hard it was to be seen, truly seen, for the work she did. No one gave her credit unless she had to fight for it, and even then, it felt like a fleeting victory. It was another grueling day in the ICU when the situation with Mr. William Harper took a turn. Mr. Harper was the CEO of a major tech company, a philanthropist who had made headlines for his generous contributions to healthcare. He was the kind of man that hospitals across the country would bend over backward to help. His heart attack had come out of nowhere, a shocking event that sent waves through the community. Samantha had been assigned to oversee his care, and she was determined to give him the best treatment possible. She'd read about him, admired his work, and now she had the opportunity to make a real difference. But Mr. Harper's condition quickly worsened. His heart rate remained dangerously erratic, and his blood pressure dropped. Despite the initial attempts to stabilize him, the team struggled to regain control. "Something's off," Samantha said to Dr. Daniels after reviewing his lab results. "His blood pressure isn't responding to the vasopressors. We need to adjust the meds." Dr. Daniels dismissed her immediately. "I'm the one calling the shots here, Nurse Wright. Stick to your job." But Samantha couldn't let it go. She felt that something wasn't right. She requested a second opinion from a specialist, despite Dr. Daniels' reluctance. Time was running out, and she knew Mr. Harper's chances of survival were slim if they didn't act fast. It was at that moment, when everyone else was second-guessing her, that she had a sudden surge of clarity. She took control, making the adjustments she knew were necessary, staying calm under pressure. She called in a code blue when Mr. Harper's vitals began to deteriorate, and within minutes the entire ICU team was focused on his recovery. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Mr. Harper's heart stabilized, and slowly his vitals began to improve. Samantha remained by his side, monitoring him through the night. It was a long, tense few hours, but when she finally saw the signs of improvement, she allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The following morning after Mr. Harper's recovery, Samantha was summoned to meet with the hospital's chief of staff, Dr. Garcia. When she entered the office, Dr. Garcia was sitting behind her desk, a look of seriousness on her face. "Samantha, I need to commend you for your work with Mr. Harper," Dr. Garcia began. "You showed extraordinary presence of mind, and it's because of you that we were able to save him." Samantha's heart raced. She hadn't expected praise, especially not from someone like Dr. Garcia, who had seen so many people come and go in her career. "You've done more than just follow orders," Dr. Garcia continued. "You've saved lives. You've earned recognition." Before Samantha could respond, Dr. Garcia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and then turned back to Samantha. "I'm going to recommend you for a hospital-wide recognition award, and you'll be featured in an upcoming press release about Mr. Harper's recovery." Samantha blinked, stunned. "Thank you, Dr. Garcia, but I just did my job." Dr. Garcia smiled warmly. "You did more than your job, Samantha. You took charge when no one else did." Samantha left Dr. Garcia's office in a daze. The recognition felt surreal. In the midst of all the prejudice, all the doubt she had faced, she had done something that no one could deny. She had saved a life, someone who, in many ways, represented the very world that had kept her down. But as the day wore on, the recognition felt bittersweet. Samantha knew that even as she was being praised for her actions, the road ahead would not be without obstacles. She had made enemies too, those who had been passed over for promotions or recognition. She had no illusions about what this success would cost her. Just as she was about to head home for the night, she received an unexpected message from the hospital's public relations team. "The President of the United States would like to personally thank you for your heroic actions in saving Mr. Harper's life. A meeting will be scheduled soon." Samantha could hardly believe what she was reading. The President of the United States wanted to meet her? A simple nurse from Philadelphia, who had been fighting for respect and recognition her entire career, now found herself at the center of the country's most powerful spotlight. It was too much to process in one moment. She stared at her phone, the message blinking back at her. Her hands trembled as she slowly set it down on the counter. A meeting with the president. Her pulse quickened, a mix of excitement and dread rushing through her veins. What could this meeting possibly mean? Was it truly a gesture of appreciation, or was there something darker brewing just beneath the surface? "Hey, Sam, everything okay?" Sarah, her best friend and fellow nurse, called from the other side of the break room. Samantha hadn't even realized Sarah was standing there. Samantha looked up, blinking rapidly, as if waking from a trance. She forced a smile, trying to hide the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. "Yeah, I'm fine, just a little overwhelmed." "Overwhelmed?" Sarah walked over to her, raising an eyebrow. "What happened? You look like you just saw a ghost." Samantha hesitated, then handed her phone to Sarah. "The president wants to meet me. He wants to thank me for saving Mr. Harper's life." Sarah's eyes widened, disbelief flashing across her face. "Wait, the president? Are you serious? This is insane, Sam." "I don't know what to think," Samantha admitted, her voice low. "I've been working here for years, and all of a sudden, it feels like everything is changing. I've been recognized, but I can't wrap my head around it." Sarah nodded, a concerned look crossing her face. "It's a huge honor, Sam. But be careful. You know how the system works. They don't just recognize people like us without a catch." Samantha nodded slowly. She knew that Sarah was right. Even as the recognition poured in, Samantha couldn't ignore the whispers she'd heard, how people in higher positions, like Dr. Daniels, had treated her. Was this just another way to control her? A way to keep her in line? A part of her still couldn't shake the feeling that her rise to the top wasn't entirely about merit. Before she could dwell on the thought further, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message from the PR team or any hospital official. It was an encrypted message from an unknown sender. "You've been noticed. The truth about Mr. Harper's health is more than just a medical issue. He's a pawn in something much bigger. You're getting closer to discovering the truth. Be careful." Samantha's stomach dropped. She stared at the message, her pulse quickening. What did this mean? Was someone trying to warn her? Or was it just another attempt to intimidate her into backing off? The day of her meeting with President Green arrived faster than Samantha anticipated. The hospital had arranged everything. Security, transportation, everything was meticulously planned. She was told to meet at the presidential office building, a place she could only have dreamed of entering as a child. A few hours before the meeting, Samantha couldn't shake the unease that had settled deep in her chest. She hadn't spoken to Dr. Garcia or anyone else about the cryptic message, but she knew she couldn't ignore it. As she stepped into the sleek, black car that would take her to the meeting, her thoughts wandered back to Mr. Harper. She remembered the look on his face after she saved his life, the gratitude mixed with something else she couldn't quite place. Was he hiding something? Was he more involved in the chaos surrounding the hospital than she realized? The car glided through the city streets, finally arriving at the gates of the presidential office. Security was tight, but Samantha had no choice but to go through the motions. She couldn't help but feel like she was entering a labyrinth, one where every turn brought more questions than answers. "Good afternoon, Miss Wright," a suited man greeted her when she entered the building. "We've been expecting you. Please follow me." She was led down a corridor lined with portraits of past presidents. The air was thick with history, with power. Her nerves were on edge, but she held her head high. She had earned this moment, no matter how surreal it felt. When she finally stepped into the Oval Office, the president was sitting at a grand desk, papers scattered around him. He stood up and extended his hand, his smile warm but calculated. "Nurse Wright, it's an honor to meet you." Samantha shook his hand, trying to steady her breath. "It's an honor to be here, Mr. President. I never imagined I'd be in this position." President Green chuckled, a sound that echoed throughout the room. "You've earned it. What you did for Mr. Harper was nothing short of remarkable. People like you are the backbone of this country. Without people like you, we'd be nowhere. Samantha couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. His praise was too polished, too rehearsed. She had seen the same kind of thing before in the hospital. The empty words that people used to feign gratitude while trying to maintain control. "Thank you, Mr. President," she said, her voice steady. "I just did my job. Mr. Harper needed care, and I was there for him." The president's eyes narrowed slightly as if he were trying to assess her. "Yes, well, your job has certainly drawn attention, Nurse Wright. You've become a symbol of hope and resilience, a beacon of the values we want to uphold. And as such, I'd like to offer you something." Samantha's heart raced. What is he offering? "I believe you're due for a reward, something more substantial than a hospital plaque. A position with a government initiative focused on healthcare reform," President Green continued. "We want you to help us change the system from within. You've seen what it's like to be on the front lines. We want you to be part of the team that drives change." Samantha froze. This was a moment she had never expected. A part of her wanted to say yes, to take the opportunity and run with it. But another part of her felt uneasy. She could sense that there was more to this offer, something hidden beneath the surface. Was she being used? Or was this truly an opportunity for her to make a difference? I appreciate the offer, Mr. President," Samantha began carefully, "but I'm not sure this is what I want. I came to nursing to help people, not to be part of a political game." The president's smile faltered for just a moment. "Of course, take your time to think it over. But remember, you can only turn this opportunity down once." Before Samantha could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Sarah. "I don't trust them, Sam. Be careful. I've been digging into Harper's background. There's something big going on, something that's connected to his sudden recovery." Samantha's heart skipped a beat. What was Sarah talking about? Was Harper not just a philanthropist? What was he hiding? Why was there so much more to this than she had initially realized? The president's eyes locked onto hers. "Are you all right, Nurse Wright?" Samantha swallowed, her thoughts racing. Was this her moment to ask the questions she'd been afraid to ask? Was it time to dig deeper and find out the truth, no matter the cost? The weight of the president's offer hung heavy in the air, suffocating the room with its promise and threat. Samantha's mind raced, torn between the chance to reshape the healthcare system from within and the nagging sense that something wasn't right. The president's words had been rehearsed too perfectly, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt like a pawn in a game she didn't understand. "Mr. President," Samantha finally said, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside her. "I didn't come to nursing for political gain. I came to help people, to make a real difference. This offer, I need time to think about it. I can't make a decision like this on the spot." The president's smile tightened, but he quickly masked it with a practiced cordiality. "Of course, Nurse Wright, you have time. But remember, opportunities like this don't come around often." He walked around his desk, as if to stand closer to her. "The country needs people like you, people who have the courage to do what's right. I'm sure you'll come to see the value of this. Take some time, but don't wait too long." Samantha nodded, but inside she was on edge. Take time? Or was this just a way to make sure she didn't dig too deep into whatever was going on behind the scenes? She glanced at her phone again, and Sarah's message still sat at the top of the screen. The feeling of unease deepened. "I'll keep in touch, Mr. President," Samantha said, her voice firm. "Thank you for your time." As she turned to leave, the president's voice called out after her. "Remember, Nurse Wright, change is a difficult road, but sometimes you have to take a step into the unknown to create real impact." The door closed behind her, and Samantha exhaled, her head spinning. Change or control? She wasn't sure anymore. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she truly knew about Mr. Harper and his connections. Back in her apartment that evening, Samantha sat down on the couch, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. The meeting with the president had left her feeling like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into a chasm she couldn't quite understand. She didn't trust the offer. It felt too much like a trap. But she also couldn't shake the pull of wanting to do something that could change the world. But there was more. Something kept gnawing at her, something that didn't add up. She pulled out her phone, scrolling back to Sarah's message. She had to know more about Mr. Harper. Was he really the philanthropic icon he appeared to be? Or was he involved in something darker? Sarah had said she'd been digging into his background, but what had she found? Before she could respond to Sarah, another message popped up. This time it was from an unknown number. We know you're asking questions about Mr. Harper. It's not wise to dig any deeper. Leave it alone or you'll regret it. Samantha's heart raced. The anonymous threats weren't new to her, but this one felt different. It wasn't a vague warning anymore. It felt personal. Whoever was behind it knew exactly what she was investigating. Her phone buzzed again. Sarah had replied, Sam, you don't understand. Harper's not just a businessman. I've found ties to a powerful network involving illegal deals, money laundering, and, get this, connections to some of the most powerful politicians in the country. He's involved in something much bigger. You have to be careful. I've been digging into his recovery and there's no medical explanation for what happened. Something's off. Something's going on behind closed doors and you need to stay far away from it. Samantha's breath hitched. Money laundering? Politicians? This wasn't just a hospital case anymore. She was deep in a web of corruption, far deeper than she ever imagined. And now people were actively trying to intimidate her into backing off. She tossed her phone aside, pacing the room. Her instincts screamed at her to back away, to take the safe route and forget about everything. But she couldn't. She had already come too far. The truth was too close, and she couldn't turn her back on it. Not now. The next few days were a blur of hospital shifts and mounting tension. Samantha's mind was consumed by the messages and the mysteries surrounding Mr. Harper. She couldn't stop thinking about the way the president had spoken to her, how he had tried to reel her in with flattering words, making her feel like she was a key part of the country's future. But the more she thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit. What if Mr. Harper's recovery wasn't just a medical miracle? What if it was part of a larger plan, a staged event to manipulate the public or hide something far darker? On her day off, Samantha decided to visit the hospital's records department, pretending to look up routine documents. She knew the files on Mr. Harper's medical history would be locked, but she had worked in the ICU long enough to know that the right connections could give her access. After some subtle maneuvering, she managed to find the right file. The details inside were shocking. Harper's medical chart showed an almost instantaneous recovery, something no medical explanation could account for. He had been on death's door, yet hours later, he had shown signs of improvement that didn't make sense, even with the medications. But it wasn't just his recovery that stood out. There were hidden notations in his chart, brief mentions of his connection to certain individuals, mentions of private meetings, classified discussions, and unreported transactions. Samantha's hands shook as she read. She knew she had to take this information to someone she could trust. Just then, she heard footsteps approaching from behind her. Before she could turn around, a hand reached out, grabbing her arm and pulling her into a dark corner of the office. Samantha gasped, her heart leaping into her throat. "Thought you could get away with this, huh?" a low voice growled. "You've been digging where you shouldn't." Samantha tried to pull away, but the grip tightened. Her pulse raced. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, though her voice quivered with fear. "We want you to stop," the voice said, his words cold and menacing. "You've seen too much. Walk away now and nothing happens to you. Keep going, and we'll make sure you disappear." Samantha's mind spun. She recognized the voice, one of the hospital security guards, someone who had been quietly watching her movements. "Is this about Mr. Harper?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man didn't answer. Instead, he pushed her roughly against the wall, his eyes narrowing in warning. "If you don't leave it alone, Nurse Wright, the next time you come here, you won't leave with your life intact." The confrontation at the hospital left Samantha shaken to the core. She knew now that she was standing at a crossroads. Every step she took from here could lead her closer to the truth, or to her undoing. The anonymous threats, the hospital's involvement in corruption, and the danger of uncovering the truth were all too real. But Samantha couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that there was more to this than just politics. If Mr. Harper's recovery wasn't what it seemed, then the implications were far-reaching. What had she stumbled upon? And who was willing to go to such great lengths to keep the truth buried? The weight of everything was crashing down on her. As much as she wanted to walk away and accept the recognition that had been offered to her, she knew that if she didn't keep pushing, the lies would continue. The system would remain broken. The powerful would continue to manipulate those without a voice. She stood in the middle of her apartment, the city's lights blinking through the window. Her phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. You don't want to be a part of this. Let it go. It's not too late to walk away, or we will make sure you don't get the chance to speak. Samantha couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The tension had built up over the last few days, and she knew the clock was ticking. Every move she made seemed to lead her further into dangerous territory. The messages, the threats. She could no longer ignore them. Someone wanted her silenced, and it was clear that they wouldn't stop until she was. But the deeper she dug into Mr. Harper's case, the more she uncovered, and the more she realized that her instincts had been right all along. She had learned enough about Mr. Harper's sudden recovery and the corrupt network of influential figures he was connected to. The stolen funds, the illegal transactions, the shady dealings with powerful politicians. Harper was just the tip of the iceberg. He was a pawn in a much larger game, one that involved individuals who controlled the fate of the country. But as the threats became more menacing, Samantha faced a terrifying choice. The hospital, the president, and those pulling the strings behind the scenes were far more powerful than she could have ever anticipated. Every person who got too close to the truth ended up disappearing, and now she could feel herself becoming a target. Her phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with another anonymous message. Stop digging, Samantha. You're running out of time. If you continue, you'll regret it. Samantha's pulse quickened as she read the message. Regret it? She had already made the decision. She couldn't walk away now, not when she had come so far, not when she knew what she knew. But the danger was closing in. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. The walls of her apartment felt like they were closing in around her. She was trapped in a game far too big for her to handle alone. Later that night, as Samantha prepared to leave for her shift, there was a knock at her door. She froze. Nobody knew where she lived. Her heart raced, the sudden sound sending a surge of adrenaline through her veins. Slowly, she approached the door, her mind racing with every possible scenario. She opened it cautiously, expecting the worst. To her surprise, it wasn't a stranger standing there. It was Sarah. Her eyes were wide with fear, her face pale. Sam, we need to talk, Sarah said urgently. It's bad. They're coming for you. They know you've been asking questions. Samantha stepped aside to let Sarah in, her heart pounding. What do you mean? What's happening? I've been digging deeper into Harper's case, Sarah said, her voice shaky. There's more going on than just money laundering. He's involved in a black market organ trafficking operation. The politicians, they've been using his charity as a front to launder money and traffic human organs. And the hospital, the entire hospital, has been complicit in covering it up. Samantha's world tilted. She had suspected something was wrong, but this, organ trafficking, it was too monstrous to comprehend. But why would Mr. Harper be involved? Samantha asked, her voice cracking. Why would someone like him, someone so respected, be part of something so horrific? Sarah hesitated before speaking again. He's not just a philanthropist. He's a key player in a much bigger operation. His so-called recovery, it was orchestrated. He was never supposed to survive, but someone needed him alive for a bigger plan. They needed him to stay in the public eye so they could continue their illegal operations without suspicion. Samantha's hands trembled as she processed the information. This wasn't just about Mr. Harper or the hospital. It was about a global network that spanned far beyond what she had imagined. Before Samantha could respond, the door to her apartment slammed open. Two men in black suits stormed in, their faces hard and cold. Ms. Wright, one of them said, his voice low and menacing. It's time to stop. Samantha's heart sank as she realized who they were. The people from the hospital, the ones who had been threatening her all along. Get out of here, Sarah yelled, but it was too late. One of the men grabbed her by the arm, dragging her toward the door. No! Samantha shouted, rushing toward Sarah. But the second man stepped in her way, blocking her. You should have listened, the man said, his eyes narrowing. You're getting in way over your head. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Samantha felt a wave of panic, but she quickly suppressed it. This wasn't the time to be afraid. This was the moment to act. With all the strength she had, she grabbed a nearby chair and threw it at the man holding Sarah. He stumbled back, giving her just enough time to shove Sarah toward the door. "Run!" Samantha screamed. Sarah didn't hesitate. She bolted down the hallway, disappearing around the corner just as the two men regained their footing. But it wasn't over yet. Samantha knew she had to make a choice. She could leave and save herself, or she could stay and fight for the truth, no matter the cost. Samantha turned to face the men, her heart racing. They were closing in on her, and she knew she didn't have much time. They had come for her, and she could feel the weight of their threat. But just as they lunged toward her, the sound of sirens blared in the distance. A police car screeched to a halt outside the building. The two men paused, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Samantha didn't hesitate. She ran toward the window, yanked it open, and climbed out onto the fire escape. Her feet hit the cold metal rungs, and she began to descend rapidly, hoping to lose them in the maze of alleyways below. As she reached the bottom, she saw Sarah waiting for her face pale but determined. "You did the right thing, Sam," Sarah said. "We need to get out of here. They'll come after us." Samantha nodded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had done what needed to be done. She had exposed the truth, and now she had to stay alive long enough to make sure it all came to light. The next few weeks were a blur of secrecy and fear. Samantha and Sarah moved quickly, staying off the grid as the truth about Mr. Harper's connections began to leak. The media caught wind of the story, and within days the entire nation was gripped by the scandal. Mr. Harper was arrested, and many of the politicians involved in the operation were implicated. The hospital, too, faced an intense investigation, with several staff members being charged for their involvement in the cover-up. But for Samantha, the victory felt hollow. She had fought for justice, but at what cost? Her life, her career, everything she had worked for, was now in ruins. She couldn't return to the hospital, not with the target on her back. She had exposed a system that was willing to sacrifice anything and anyone for power. As she sat in the small apartment they had been hiding out in, Samantha glanced at her phone. There was a message from Dr. Garcia. "Samantha, I don't know if you'll see this, but I wanted to thank you. You were right. Everything you uncovered was true. The system is broken, but you've changed it. You're a hero, even if the world doesn't know it yet." Samantha smiled, the weight of the journey finally lifting from her shoulders. She had fought for the truth. She had paid a price, but it was worth it. But as she turned away from the window, she knew this wasn't the end. There were still battles to fight, battles she would face head-on. The system had tried to break her, but she had survived, and she would keep fighting.